The following is an Operation Podcast production.
I feel like I have a weird secret that more people should know about.
There has been an uptick in these conversations. The span of the conversation has gone deeper, farther, wider than I've ever known it to be before, not only just in hormones, but in reproduction, in fertility, in all of these things that really plague women. Because as someone who has gone through these massive hormonal changes, that's our baseline and it affects everything.
But the real truth is only 1 in 5 OBGYNs are actually trained in menopause care. It's not that that's a bad doctor or that they don't care. It's just that's not their training. We don't have to suffer in silence. It's great that it's here and the movement's here. We're still doing it wrong. We're still scaring women and we're still confusing women.
It really just comes down to the experience of what it is to live in a feminine body and not have shame around it. Hey y'all, I'm so excited to announce my partnership with Timeline Nutrition. As you know, I am a cancer survivor and I am always looking for any edge for longevity and wellness. And this Swiss life science company has spent 10 years in research and development, infusing their products with urolithin A, which is a mitochondrial function improver. Their MitoPure is my favorite of their products, but every one of their products is infused with this magical urolithin A, which improves cellular energy, muscle strength, endurance, decreases inflammation, and ultimately removes the damage in your mitochondrial cells. This is magic in a box. Please go to www.timelinenutrition.com/LAMN10 to get your discount on these life-saving, life-changing products. Are you ready for a wild ride? I'm Alexis Artin, and I invite you to strap in because this is more than a podcast. This is Look at Me Now. Hello, loved ones. Welcome to another episode of Look at Me Now. As always, I'm fucking excited because we have the one, the only Katy Whalen here from Joy Clinics. I wish we had been rolling, actually. I'm like looking at the person who's like filming this and looking at Katy and going like, God, I wish we had been rolling even sooner because we've just already been having such juicy conversation in the 5 minutes since we've been sitting here. But I was like, let's roll tape because we got to get this documented for everybody. So Katy started a clinic that is a game changer for everybody. But I don't want to give any spoilers right now because the story is part of what makes this clinic so fantastic. So before we get into what this clinic is, I actually just want to introduce you. Hi, Katy.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here.
So we can swear on this podcast.
Swear away, my love.
Fantastic.
Swear away. No holds barred here.
Fantastic.
I am so thrilled that you are here sitting down in the flesh with me because I love your story and your work is so important. In today's podcast, I actually want to start in the present just for a moment. And I want you in your own words to introduce what joy is. What is this magical clinic that you have made available to people? Because that will help us then go back. Yeah. I feel like in today's conversation, we're going to start where we are and then work our way backward on the timeline.
I love that. And I will tell you that I named it Joy. It's spelled J-O-I, but I named it Joy because that is the feeling that I wanted women to have. I went through it personally. As you mentioned, there's a personal story, which is, common for entrepreneurs that start a business. But what I wanted to give women was joy because I feel like we do so much for so many other people. We care so much for so many other people. And, after I went through it with fertility, with kids, with the whole thing, found myself in my early 40s, it was a little bit of joy lacking. And so what we essentially do is we fill in gaps where the current system is basically failing us. We fill in those gaps by working on proactive and preventative healthcare for women. We do deep dive labs and we look at all the things: hormones, thyroid, mineral deficiencies, vitamin deficiencies, inflammation, and we say, how do we get you feeling better? And so it could be a lot of things. It could be just simple lifestyle changes. It could be supplements based on exactly what your labs are showing us. What we do a lot with women, because of a lot of our women's are 30s, 40s, 50s. So we do a lot of hormone care, a lot of perimenopause, menopause. And then we do these cool holistic therapies called peptides. And I kind of consider these like the icing on the cake, just to kind of like optimize your health, as much as you can. We really want women to just feel better on a day-to-day basis. And we're that support for them, where I feel the healthcare system is a little lacking.
Well, anybody that's listened to anything that I've ever said before knows that I not only am I my bread and butter, my sweet spot, my passionate purpose in life is female empowerment. But beyond that, anybody who's followed my journey even more recently knows that I've had a medical crisis where I had lower uterine cancer, endometrial with cervical invasion, to be specific, and having an MSH2 gene marker, which is basically like going and getting your gene panel and saying like, you're predisposed to these particular medical conditions, and this is how you can be proactive about it. So once we identified that, everybody determined, your ovaries have to come out when we do this hysterectomy, which means I immediately went into menopause. And not that I wasn't in perimenopause, I was certainly having symptoms when this diagnosis happened, but getting full throttle thrown into menopause, like you wake up from surgery and you're in it, like full blast. And so as you can imagine, I got really into understanding, learning about, being in conversation about hormones and menopause and perimenopause and all of these things. And I have noticed that there has been an uptick in these conversations, conversations being more public. And I'm even going to venture to say that the span of the conversation has gone deeper, farther, wider than I've ever known it to be before, not only just in hormones, but in reproduction, in fertility, in all of these things that really plague women. And as somebody who is all about female empowerment and all about us being the experts of our own bodies, there is such a huge importance to understanding these things, because as someone who has gone through these massive hormonal changes, that's our baseline and it affects everything. Everything. Like, I'm going to say it one more time with an exclamation point. Everything. Like, yes. Whoa.
The foundation. It's really the foundation.
It really is. And when they say like, you don't have your health, you don't have anything, that is 1000% true. And it really includes the scope of what we're talking about, especially in the age ranges of women that you just mentioned, like 30s through 50s. So that said, I just really wanted to underline and like double click on that, because it is something that I think does need to be brought into the light more, does need to be part of the mainstream conversation, and is going to have value for anybody that is listening, who may or may not be aware. I have a client the other day who was like, I was experiencing this, and then I threw this temper tantrum, and then my body felt like this. And I'm like, sweetie, I think you might be needing to see somebody. I think you might be having some perimenopause. Wait, what? No. And then she went and saw somebody. I was like, just check it. Can't hurt to check. And she's like, you were right. That explains so much. So again, these conversations are so important because awareness is our superpower. Anyway, yes. I digress. So let's go back to now the beginnings. So we've stated what it is that you're doing, this remarkable, much needed work in the world through Joy Clinic. But let's go back to the beginnings. So first of all, tell me about your origin story. Tell me from where you come. give me the like, how did you form and crystallize into this human that you are now? Where did it start?
That sounds like a very, very long time ago. But, in terms of basically how I got to this seat where I am today, I got married a little bit later on. I was 35 when I met my husband. And at that point, I was very excited to, one track mind, let's start a family. And looking back now at that young woman that I was, the naivety of how, excited I was and how easy I thought the process would be. It just wasn't. It was not that for me. And I know I'm not alone in that. But, our first pregnancy, I didn't have a problem ever getting pregnant, but, I had a lot of problems keeping it. So our first baby girl had a fatal genetic defect, basically. And that was just really traumatic for us. We thought everything was going fine. And then, when, 20 weeks in, you get no, this is not going to be viable. And it was just shocking to hear, after you've been so excited for so long. It really took a toll on us. It was very stressful. We kind of went opposite ways. My husband was like, holy moly, I didn't know this could happen and I need a break. Whereas like the woman warrior in me was like, I've got to do this. I've got to keep going. Like, let's go. Created a lot of stress in our marriage. And from there, I kept having miscarriages. I had a few more, and then I did some IVF stuff, retrievals, drugs, interviewed surrogates. Finally, then I was able to have 2 healthy babies, and I'm so very grateful for that. But by that time, I was, in my early 40s, and I was a former shell of myself. Like, it just took too much out of me emotionally, physically. It's hard what we go through. So at that point, I was just, I remember looking in the mirror going, I don't recognize what I see. I know I don't have the energy anymore to take care of the babies that I wanted so bad. And at that point, it was a little bit strange because I looked around and felt abandoned. I was like, I had so much help to get pregnant, to stay pregnant, to have the kids. And after that 6-week appointment where they were like, you're good, you can have sex now, be on your way. I didn't feel like I had any support, but I wasn't okay there at that point. So for me, that's when I was like, I need something more. And I actually was lucky because my husband, who had been in healthcare his whole career, had went through hormonal issues actually before me. And he decided to start this clinic called Blokes, which really optimizes men's hormones, testosterone. There's an epidemic of men's testosterone getting lower. So he had started this, clinic for men, and I was having my babies. Wasn't paying attention. I wasn't going to, jump in. But what I did was I went through the program. I was like, I need help, and I don't know where to go. My OBGYN didn't offer anything besides you're fine. So I went through the program. I did a really deep dive lab, and there was all sorts of things that was on there that I could work on. So I started balancing my hormones. I started using these cool things called peptides, and I was really blown away. I was very blown away by where I got and how quickly I got there. I mean, I still had to do all the work. I'm not saying anything was like a magic pill. We all know that. But these tools really helped me get to a place where I felt good and I looked good, and I knew I wouldn't have gotten there. And so for me, that's when I felt like we need to do this for women. Like women deserve to feel good after everything that we go through. And so that's when I decided to put back on the working hat and join my husband, and we started Joy, the women's side, and we're really just here to help women feel better. And that's it. That simple.
That simple and that heroic and that complicated and all those things. Because I was telling you earlier that after my first child, who I got we said, let's try to have a baby. And we're thinking, everybody said, it takes time. It'll take a year. First try. First try, people.
Good for you.
Well, I mean, after I had that baby, I went into massive postpartum depression, massive. And it was actually at his first birthday that I remember thinking to myself, I might be able to do this mom thing.
Wow.
So you can imagine a whole year. And by the way, I had a dear friend who had postpartum depression, and she was checking on me daily.
Wow.
And she could tell what was going on. And she said that I think by the time I had gotten to like, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks, something like that postpartum, she said to me, if you don't call your doctor like today, I'm calling.
Wow.
There's a problem here. So I did address it, but the only way that they addressed it was like throwing like a pill at me.
Right.
It wasn't they didn't draw blood work. They didn't get to the root of it. There wasn't like maybe you should see someone. Nothing. It was, we're going to throw a pill at the problem. So you can imagine.
Sorry.
That's okay. So you can imagine. But what was so fascinating to me was how alone I felt in it, even though I had, a friend or other friends who had been there before. And my husband, God rest his soul, it was so hard for him to understand. Not that he didn't have like a compassion for what I was going through, but he's like, I mean, you wanted a baby, you got a baby. Like, we have somebody here that's like helping us. Like, what's happening here? And I couldn't explain it to myself. So it's crucial. But then with my second child, I thought, oh, my first was so easy. Let's just have another. And after a year of trying and miscarriages and all of these things, was like, something is not working here. And we ended up getting some fertility testing done. And it turned out that either we had a miracle the first time we got pregnant so easily, or things had changed dramatically in both of our, fertility viability, because our testing was like, it would be a miracle if you two got pregnant naturally.
That is crazy. It is a miracle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. That's crazy.
So I did the IVF route, and that is how I had my second son. Wow. So I've really run the gamut in terms of experiences when it comes to all of this. And having those experiences coupled with my cancer experience, and being such a authentic, open book kind of person, a lot of people feel that they can share with me their experiences. Yeah. And it is astounding how many women have, I'm just going to throw a label on it, even though like labels or generalizations, but like horror stories about how the, Western medicine has let them down in a lot of ways. Yes. And look, my dad was a doctor. Western medicine was a huge part of saving my life. I'm not poo-pooing it.
No, I get
But what
it.
I am saying is I'm in agreement that there are gaps, there are holes, there are blank spaces that it is so important to be filling in for women, because it is so nuanced and so complex what we go through. Your story versus my story versus the millions of other stories that women have around not just their fertility, but their postpartum experience, or not even fertility related or postpartum related, but just hormonally. We all menstruate. We all go through a life cycle of perimenopause and menopause if we have the organs and the systems. So now you had this sort of journey of having these two kids and opening this clinic. And tell me, in terms of being, establishing this is, I guess what I'll say, during COVID, like what was the response to giving this gift to people that otherwise might not have had it?
It's funny because I feel like as one of the founders, it's like just a daily grind usually. And I feel at the moment, since we're trying to scale, I feel like I'm just like in it. And like it's like you have to be a constant problem solver. And I'm frankly overwhelmed and just feel busy. But the thing that like stops me and slows me down is I will every once in a while get a message from somebody or see an email from somebody where they say, "Hey, you've changed my life." And that's like, to me, I'm not kidding. Like I'm like, whoa, like I gotta stop and like really like take that in, because instead of just like the day-to-day, oh, what's going wrong? What do I have to solve? It's like, it's so filling to hear that kind of stuff. And I do. And that's, sometimes I can't believe it. But you know this, and what's one thing that's really amazing that I want to address with you and kind of ask you is, the doctor that you went and saw obviously did know that you needed help right after you're getting your ovaries removed. And that's fantastic, because what I see and the stories that women tell me is usually they go to their OBGYN and they're told they're fine, they're normal, why do you need to check that? And they're more gaslit on, or even they're told hormones will cause cancer, So there's still this, I guess it also goes back to what you're talking about, this mistrust of the system. And I'm not here to bash on the system, because it is great for a lot of things. Like you said, you need surgery, you have a broken bone, you get diagnosed with cancer, like you want that system there. Mm-hmm. But the research also shows that we actually do have a problem with the system, and the problem's access for some people. There's a huge trust issue, and the trust issue is especially with college-educated women. So there was a Harris poll recently that said 70% of all U.S. adults feel like the healthcare system has failed them. And college-educated women is the largest pessimistic portion of that too, which is exactly for the reasons you said. So that trust issue is there. And then there's another issue with training. So I'm so glad that your doctor understood, like, we've got to figure out what your plan is for after we remove your ovaries. But the real truth is only 1 in 5 OBGYNs are actually trained in menopause care. So most women, 4 out of 5 women that go to their, OBGYN for help, it's not that that's a bad doctor or that they don't care. It's just that's not their training.
Well, and to be fair, I also am I'm a hip girl. Like I'm an aware woman.
I believe that.
I also, if it hadn't have been presented to me by my surgical oncologist, OBGYN person, I would have been like a bull at the gate saying, where's my hormone replacement therapy? And not that it doesn't come with inherent risk, but of a recurrence of cancer of some sort. But every medication comes with a risk reward analysis to it. And usually you take it because the risk reward far outweighs the risk. But I will say that, having a team of doctors and not just relying on one has been a game changer for me. And not that I want so many cooks in the kitchen, because you can get into hara-kiri there, right. But I am somebody that, and I think this is the key takeaway here for people, is that you get to be your own expert. You get to gather all of the information from all of the resources, Eastern, Western, maybe there's some sort of Northern, I don't know, but Southern. But gather all of your resources, gather all of your information, find out everything that's out there and available to you, not so that you have, paralysis by analysis, but so that you have information, you go, this is what is going to work for me. I'm not just going to, be force fed what my protocol is.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. Honestly, thank you. Hallelujah.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
Because that is one of my pet peeves. Look, we've talked about menopause as a whole as having a moment, and we're talking about it. And that's fucking awesome, right? We're not alone. We have options. We don't have to suffer in silence. It's great that it's here and the movement's here. But I think we're still doing it wrong, because I think we're still scaring women and we're still confusing women. Because what I see out there are these experts that constantly say, differing things about what the right thing is, what the right level is, what the right test is. Should you take a test? If someone just scamming you if this is too high, then you might, die. Like the fear out there, it's like selling based on fear is kind of what's happening. And I get women all the time that are like, can I trust this? Who can I trust? Who is right? And so it pisses me off that we're still making women fearful. And here's the thing, you said it exactly right. One thing I want to do is empower women. I want to use education to empower them to make the right decision for themselves. Because one method or one level or one way of doing things might work for you, but it might not for me or for your friend down the street. We are all a little bit different. And so the goal is we have access, we have education, and at the end of the day, you're the one deciding. You get the data on yourself, you own that data, and then you are the one that's deciding what path is right for you, and you're not shamed for it. Like there's an example I'll give you. A lot of people, there's a lot of providers saying don't use pellets, don't use hormone pellets, and I'll say I agree. I don't recommend pellets. We don't do pellets, but I work with someone. One of my best friends will tell you it saved her life. It changed her life. And so even though I'll be very honest, I don't recommend it. And here's why. It also does work for some women. And if you take that option away from the people that it works for, I think that's a disservice. Or if you shame them or make other women fearful, I don't think that's how we should do it. I think we should realize that there are different things that work for different people. And as long as everyone's very informed of the risks versus the benefits, then they can own that journey for themselves and make the right choice for themselves.
And you're never going to know unless you're empowered to try.
Right.
Right? It's sort of like my kids. I'm like, try it once. If you don't like it, great.
Right.
Then we'll move on. If it's a no for you, then it's a no.
Yeah.
But you're never gonna know
Right.
unless you try it if it's a no or a yes for you.
And that's what the medical professionals are there for, by the way. They're there to keep you like in the safe zone.
Right. Like me as a parent, I'm not going to tell him to go try something that is, I'm not going to encourage
Yes.
it anyway, something that isn't
There's guide rails.
healthy and viable for him to try. But yeah, I think that there is, knowledge is power, and gather all the knowledge and be empowered to make the decision based off of that knowledge, and don't just be force fed, oh, well, I read this book and this is the way to do it.
Right. There's not one way. Yeah.
No. And I think that there is something really magical and magnificent in the fact that, I'm just going to say it this way, you weren't selfish with your miracle. You had an experience of feeling like you were up against a wall and, as most women feel, very alone.
Right.
And not sure what to do or where to go or how to move forward in advocating for yourself, but you figured out a way, and you came back for us and you said, I figured out a way, and let me help you. Let me show you. Let me actually use my resources to generate a system that can help all of you. And I think that I say this often on this podcast, like, this is where your mess becomes your message. And it is you, using what you suffered through as, a guiding light to people that are living in the dark shadows, or, suffering silently through God knows whatever they're suffering through.
Yeah.
And to know that we're not alone. And I will even, double down on that and say, in today's society, we are all so isolated, right? I mean, the forms of connection we are having are becoming social media, and like it's the bonds are weakening, right? And that's why loneliness is an epidemic right now, and all of those things. But in the past, that wasn't the way. The way was the women were all together. The women were supporting each other. The women were helping each other through. We were I say this loosely, but like the tribe of us, right? The culture and community of us are how we got through, was we leaned into one another. And our society now has, divided and conquered the feminine in a way. So in many ways, a myriad of ways. And so you're sort of like in your own little slice of the world, rejoining us and being the, not just a hashtag, but like women supporting women, real work, real time.
100%. I mean, why don't I want that tribe. Like that feels so good to me. I mean, when a woman helps me, when I see like, yes, please. Like I want that community,
yes.
that
And you
tribe.
said, yes. And you said the word that always just, gets me, which is shame, right? Making this a shame-free process.
Yes.
And we carry so much shame in our bodies, and that has so much to do with what it means to be in a feminine body, which is inherent in what we're talking about. It is inherent in how our bodies develop into, female or feminine bodies. It is how we do menstruate. It is how we are designed to birth. It is how we are designed to then cycle through into perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause. And there is just so much about what it means to live in a feminine body that carries shame. Whether that is that we carry an apology in our chest, whether that is we hold a locking in our hips, whether that is we're embarrassed by, maybe getting your first period and you're bleeding and it's embarrassing. Oh, I bled through my pants. Like whatever it may be, there is so much shame around it. And, even talking about infertility or miscarriage, those were things that were not publicly discussed.
And menopause?
Menopause?
Are you kidding me?
Hell no. Hell to the no.
That means when I was young, I thought, that just means you're old and you're going to die soon.
Even women just talking proactively about sex, or about, you saying like, oh, my husband's testosterone was low or whatever. Who speaks of these things?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
We do now.
But we do now.
We do
And I
now.
think that is such a huge piece of the puzzle here, is removing the shame labels from it.
Right.
It's something that I've always even thought about in terms of how women hide their first trimester.
Yeah.
They don't tell people.
I find that strange too.
And it's like, well, is it because it's a bad luck thing? Is it because you're afraid that if it doesn't work out, that there is something to be ashamed of? That you need to or
you
keep
don't want to
secret?
burden someone with that.
Whatever, yes, or whatever it may be. But it's
Yeah.
like, allow the support.
Yes.
Allow yourself to be seen and held in whatever it is that transpires. And look, to each their own. Whoever
Right.
wants to keep it private, please do. I'm not shaming you. But I just have question marks around that.
Oh my
Because
God.
again, it really just comes down to the experience of what it is to live in a feminine body and not have shame around it.
Yeah, same. That's so crazy. I literally had that thought 2 days ago when someone said they were pregnant and said, yeah, I'm how far along? 12 weeks. I'm like, why do people wait? And again, it's fine if that's what you want to do, but it is, for me, I find such power in women and my group and my tribe, and being honest and open and saying, this is what I'm going through and I need your help, or, how did you do this? Or,
And it is that's the time you need support the most, is when you're struggling like that. I mean, one of my best friends went through like 13 rounds of IVF.
wow.
And also the limitations that doctors can put on you. Now I'm going down this little circuitous route, but she was told she would never be able to get pregnant naturally, that it just wasn't possible for her, that it wasn't healthy for her, that it wasn't this and that. And the last child that she had was completely natural.
Wow.
She did some spiritual work, and she had 2 babies with IVF. Out of the 13 rounds, 1 worked, and she got twins from it. And then she kept trying, and it didn't work for her to have more. And she said, you know what, I'm just going to put it down, and I'm going to work with a spiritual person just to heal the part of me that feels so wounded by everything that I've gone through to try to have more children. And then she got pregnant naturally and delivered a miracle baby who's now, 6 years old. So again, it's be your own advocate, everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Trust your own body.
Trust your own body, trust your journey, and trust that you can have a community that will support you no matter what. And going it alone and or carrying, a story of shame or sacrifice or struggle when you're going it alone is not necessarily the most beneficial thing for you.
No, it's not beneficial for all of society.
Right.
I mean, we know that, women leave the workforce when they go through menopause. And so it's we know that marriages suffer when there's
Totally.
So it's not just the woman that's suffering. It's, the corporations, the companies, the careers, the families, the partnerships.
Yeah. Now, when you were going through it in your story, before you founded all of this, was your tendency to be sharing about it with people? Or at that point, had it not dawned on you that this is even part of the problem?
I mean, I've always felt like a calling to help my fellow sister,
Mm-hmm.
You see your friends, your families. I saw my mom suffering, throughout her whole life to try to, fit into a certain size and the yo-yo diets and that kind of thing and the struggle. And so there was an awakening where I thought this worked in a way that I didn't know it would. And I feel like I have a weird secret that more people should know about.
But even in the suffering part of it, like when you were, going through IVF and when you were miscarrying or having the genetic defect and going through all of that, after you'd had the babies and you were in the postpartum struggle of it, did you find yourself like internalizing it and not really having the community and the support?
I felt alone. Yeah.
And did you realize it at the time, or was it more after the fact, once you got help, you went, oh wow, I was really silently suffering, like in confinement with this, and it would have been so great.
Oh, it would have been so great.
So you were, yeah.
Yeah, I felt alone.
Yeah.
And it is weird. I have all those same questions as you were saying, like where, we know so many women go through different fertility struggles, miscarriages, postpartum depression, but I didn't know where to go for any of that support. And so, I do think we need to do a better job of filling in those gaps of community, just so women feel more supported in general.
We aren't even really taught about our bodies. I'm curious about when you were growing up. What did you learn, if anything, about your body, how your body works? So for instance, when I was not engaged yet, but I was with my husband, because he was on the 5-year plan to propose, just saying. I was visiting with my friend, the one that had the 13 IVF treatments. And obviously her whole life was revolving around fertility and all of these things. And she's clearly learning a lot working with all these doctors. And she was inquiring because she knew I had been with my boyfriend, now husband, for a long time. And she's like, what's the trajectory here? I mean, do you want to have kids? And I said, clock's ticking here, people. I'm waiting on him. Yes, I do. I want to get married. I want to have kids. I was ready by like month 2. I don't know what's going on here. But anyway, I digress. So she was like, well, I'm asking you this because she's like, I don't know what you know about fertility. I don't know what you know about the timeline and about the quality of your eggs and about the fact that all your eggs are in you when you're like in your mom's belly. Like,
right.
And that all the eggs you'll ever have, you're born with, and they deteriorate over time. They age over time as you do. And if you're not going to do this soon, maybe you want to freeze your eggs. Like, she's like, and I just don't know if you know any of this. I just want you to be empowered to make the best decisions for you, because if he's not going to propose and, you're approaching a certain age and all of these things, right? Because by the time I had my first son, I was 35 and I was considered a geriatric pregnancy.
I know. Isn't
People,
that horrible?
a geriatric pregnancy when you're 35.
Same.
So, but again, I remember her sitting there and like downloading all this information into me and me going, why didn't anybody tell me this?
Why not? And you have a great friend, by the way. Can we can we have more of those so that our younger generations don't have to do it like we did?
Why did nobody tell me about this? Why, when I go to my regular doctor's appointments, did they go, hey, are you having brain fog? Hey, are you having this? Are you having this? You might be in perimenopause. Maybe we should check into that.
They don't know. They are not trained that way.
It's amazing.
They are not trained that way. And, we didn't even have women in research studies and clinical trials until like the early 90s. Like this is new.
We can't advocate for ourselves if we don't even know how it's supposed to work.
No.
Unless you really take it upon yourself to like do the research to get the education. And maybe there are women out there that were raised differently than I was. I mean, I'm assuming you didn't have any education about this either.
I did not. No, I was clueless. And that's why I say I felt so naive when I started my pregnancy journey and had miscarriages. I was like, what? I had no clue.
Yeah, I had another guest on here who was like, I thought because I froze my eggs, like I was good. I could pull them out whenever, pull them out of the freezer and have a kid. And, no, the eggs went bad. Like nobody told me that.
No.
Nobody told me that there was a potential shelf life on these things. No. And now I'm aged out and I would have frozen more had I known or whatever. So,
right.
I mean, there's just so much that we are not privy to if we're just expecting it to be handed to us on a silver platter. And
right.
It's not. It's not. So again, super duper trooper hands up for, creating these clinics where we're not only getting access to, any intervention that we may be looking for, but getting the information.
Yes.
In a reliable, trustworthy place, you know?
I do believe that is another, one of my missions is access to information and data, because I also hear from women that say, I went and asked for this test. I went and asked for this to be checked, and they get denied, whether it's, we just don't do that. I don't read the lab tests. Maybe your insurance doesn't cover it. There's lots of reasons why, they're gaslit, but, I think we should have access to that information. It's ours. So that's why, I created the lab tests that I couldn't get. So you can have it.
I mean, it's also something to think about that, in the direction that we're heading in life, because this is something else that I was saying to my husband when I was going through my cancer diagnosis. Like, we are so responsible for not letting things slip through the cracks, right? It really falls down on our shoulders, right? So when I was going through my cancer diagnosis, I was really lucky that my body was very loud and communicative with me in its symptoms. But there are a lot of people that are asymptomatic with a lot of things until it's,
too late.
Way too late. And so it comes down to, not just being proactive about like going to see the dentist and sort of the basic things that we do, but being proactive in the sort of nuanced places. It's like, yes, clean your house, but and do the toilets and do the sinks and things like that. But every now and then you have to get in those crevices. You got to get in those spaces that are getting missed.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for women, I don't think that I think a lot of women might look at this as a luxury. They might look at this as something that is, not the basics, not the necessities, not something to be proactive about. But these are the spaces where things can fall through the cracks, where you aren't proactive about all the ways that you can optimize your health. Be aware of what's going on with you.
And I think, and I'll argue that most women are, because they're doing all the things for everybody else.
Yeah.
They're caring for, they're trying to do well in their career. They're caring for their partner or spouse. They're caring for their kids. They're caring for their parents. That they kind of put their needs last. And so they'll even experience the symptoms, they'll say, I don't feel as good as I think I should, or something's kind of changed, but I don't really know what, or gosh, I don't remember why I'm walking into this room, but.
And as women, we also sometimes just assume that we should suffer.
That's true too. Yeah.
Right? It's sort of like well, this is part of being a woman. I get PMS. I get this. I get that. And I guess I just need to suffer through it.
Yeah, you don't have to suffer. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to suffer. You know your body, and you do have to empower yourself to take the steps and take care of yourself. And I would argue that's the most important thing to do, so that you can then have enough energy and vitality to take care of all the other things you're taking care of.
Yeah, it's the put your own oxygen mask on first 100%. Before you're helping others. And so often our instinct is not to. Right. It's to put the oxygen mask on everybody else first. But I always like to say that, if you don't put your oxygen mask on first, you're not going to be able to put it on anybody else if you're unconscious. So,
So true.
So there's that, right? All right. Well, I want to ask, because we've sort of like dug into your past and sort of what created and led you into this current mission. And we've definitely unearthed, what you're working on and what the present moment is holding for you. And I want to turn the lens forward and look at the future on the timeline for you, which is what's coming, what's on the horizon. Like when you're, now you're getting on the highway and you've got a green light, what's coming? Where are we headed?
Right now I see just so much work in front of me. I am focused on the day-to-day of really getting this message out there and really offering the support that women deserve when they come to us. And so there's a lot behind the scenes of just making that work and serving women and getting them the access and the education. And I think we're at the beginning. I think we're really at the beginning. And so I think the future does look really bright for women to get better care, to get more focus on, to get more studies on what they need. I'm hoping women get an FDA approval for testosterone very soon, because that's still not seen as something we need, but we need it. So there's a lot of work to be done. I mentioned before, we got to stop leading with fear. We got to start empowering. We don't want to confuse these women. Hormones are safe. It's safe to care for yourself. If there's something that doesn't work for you, then you're going to know it, and it's okay to stop it. You just have to figure it out. And it takes some tinkering sometimes. You probably know this, to get everything right. Yeah. But it's a journey that's just worth it.
I'm still tinkering.
It's every day.
I'm still tinkering.
All the time.
I'm like a little Tinkerbell over here all day, every day, for sure. I mean, even just yesterday, I was telling my husband, I was like, I think I need to like adjust my hormones.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Things change.
I'm a little, well, ladies, the future is bright, so get out shades. Let's do this. All right. So I'm going to finish with the question that we always wrap with, which is, if I had a mirror and I, handed you the mirror and you were just to gaze into it, what is it that you would say to yourself in terms of acknowledging yourself, validating yourself, seeing all the resilience that you've had to have in your journey, all the resources that you have culled up to rely on when you needed them most, all to get to this point where you've created what you have created, in this moment, removing all external gaze. What is the acknowledgement and the validation and the message in the mirror for you?
It's simple. It's just, you are worth it. And I feel like I didn't learn that until I had my little girl. But now I look at her and say, wow, what a little miracle you are. And, I'm in there somewhere. I was her, and I am her.
Absolutely. I didn't get a girl. I have 2 boys.
Oh my God, but I love my little boy too. He's my little sweet guy.
They're magical. And God only gives you what you can handle, I guess. I was quite the girl on my parents' hands, so I'm sure that has something to do with it. Anyway, we could talk forever, but I want to give everybody the option to have an ongoing relationship with you. So where can they find you?
I'm always hanging out on Instagram at Joy Women's Wellness, and that's JOI. And then our website is choosejoy.co.
I mean, choose joy, ladies.
Do it.
Choose freaking joy. And then there's
Every
blokes,
damn
which
day.
is the men's side of things, right? Ladies,
Yeah. I
for
work
those
with
that
my
have
husband. He went through it first, and he actually had. I'll tell you, he had zero sex drive when I was trying to have our babies. It was really hard on our marriage, and I know it's a thing. It's a thing happening now. So guys need it too, and we really do believe, you know, if you're having problems in your marriage, you might just need a blood test.
There we go. Oh my goodness. Well, you used to have to get one in order to get married. So now it's to stay married. All right, everybody. We love you. We love you. Peace out. Signing out. Look at Me Now. Another episode with Katy Whalen in the books. See you next time.